Yeah, so welcome along everyone tonight. Thanks to everyone for joining us on our first course development event of 2022, creative games and practice design. We'll come on to Adam in a second. Just a quick introduction, Gary Middleton, if we haven't already met through one of these or a face-to-face over the last 18 months, Football Development Officer at Northumberland FA. We also have on the looking after the chat, Helen Beals, our Marketing Communications Officer, and Lynn Beals helping out with the chat and the sign-ups tonight as well. So just on that, everyone's going to receive 2 hours CPD for attending tonight, which will be added to your FA fan. So we did ask for your fan number when you signed up. There was a few that hadn't put a fan number down for whatever reason that was. If you do want your CPD hours accredited to you, you will need to either pop it on the chat tonight for Lynn or just drop me an email through and I'll make sure that you're added to the attendees list that we send through to FA Education tomorrow. So yeah, further ado, Adam, introduction, over to you. Adam Colley, FA Coach Developer.
Evening, thanks Gary, appreciate it, and good evening everybody. I can't see your faces and I can't see the chat, but hopefully the next hour will go by really quickly and we'll get some really, in terms of how much content we're going to go through, and you'll be wishing we stayed on for longer, but we'll try and get through as much as we possibly can. So thanks for joining us this evening. And thanks for getting involved in the stupid question. Just nice to find out a little bit more about people with a random question. So yeah, thanks for getting involved in that. Really appreciate it. I understand we've got some people on working that have just potentially just done their Playmaker, and people have done their introduction to coaching football, and also got some B licence and A licence coaches on as well. So hopefully there'll be a bit for everybody this evening. So this is me, wondering who this bloke is on the end of the call. So various different roles. So I'm a coach developer for the Football Association, at the moment delivering the most recent qualification, which is the Introduction to Coaching Football, or the I2CF, as it's been abbreviated to. I've also just been successful in becoming one of the new C licence coach developers as well. So replacing the level 2 will be the new UEFA C that will be launched hopefully in the springtime. I've also got experience of delivering for other national governing bodies, so I'm also a tutor and coach for England Handball, Rounders England, and Boccia England as well. I'm a tutor for UK Coaching, so deliver a variety of different titles for them, from sort of safeguarding through to the Inclusive Activity Programme, which then links into my day job, which is working for Activity Alliance, who are the leading voice for disabled people in sport and physical activity. So I'm the Inclusive Activity Programmes Officer for them. So, and I've been coaching for 21 years, so various different experiences in lots of different backgrounds. Hopefully what we go through and my experience will be able to help this evening. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Adam, just before you continue, could everyone just make sure that their cameras are switched off and everyone remains muted? If you have any questions, just pop them in the chat, and myself and Helen and Lynn will try and drop them in to Adam as we're going. This webinar has been recorded tonight, so it will be available on our website at a later stage as well. Adam, can you just before you continue, how would you say that work that you do around other sports all sort of links up and can transfer within sports as well?
Yeah, as we were chatting previously, the sort of the coaching styles are very different in all of those sports. So that's been a really interesting thing to look at, but also the different types of the games and activities. There are loads of things that can be moved across. There's obviously Rounders is a striking and fielding game, but there are so many different activities you can take from that setting and place them in a football context, and vice versa as well. So yeah, it has been really interesting to see the differences, how they can marry up together. And I would encourage anybody, if they've just been potentially coaching or been involved in one sport, think about maybe delivering and have a look at other sports as well, because you get a real varied mix, and I've certainly found it beneficial in the work that I've been doing over the last. I've been delivering for these organisations for the last sort of 7 or 8 years. So being able to put them all together has been really interesting. So yeah, good. I'm just going to tick it on to the next slide. We're right to crack on, Gary. Is that all right? Okay, so we're looking at creative games. What I want people to do, and I did this just in case you could annotate, so it's from a previous session, so apologies, but if you want to pop some stuff into the chat, if Helen and Gary, you don't mind, just let me know what's going in there.
Absolutely.
What are the go-to conditions that you go to when you start to play games, or when you start to deliver your little practices, little conditions that you put in to give the players a little bit of a challenge within the game that you play at the end, or potentially at the beginning of these sessions, if you're doing some whole part whole. What sort of conditions are we placing in those games? What are the go-tos?
Adam Dixon's come back. Define the playing area.
Whatever playing area you want. So it could be in a game, it could be in a practice that's 10 by 10. Just little conditions. Say it is a game, because we're going to be looking more at game-based practices, I suppose, in this 1 hour. So yeah, if you've got a game, what conditions do you normally throw in?
So a common one, Adam, that comes out, number of touch conditions.
Yep. So 3 touch, 2 touch. Yeah. Maybe even a bit of 1 touch.
Using different parts of the foot. Minimum number of passes.
Okay.
Focusing on the decision-making aspect, game that doesn't take away decisions. Overloads, underloads from Peter.
Cool.
Different ways to score points. Extra points for using certain skills and techniques from Scott. Different player skill levels. Time limits to get into the final third to create a chance or a shot. You can only play forward.
Yeah, brilliant.
Ball must go into a wide area before scoring a goal by Craig. Dividing the pitch into thirds. Pepper. There's some good stuff coming out, Adam.
Yeah, it's nice that there's some different ones. Obviously,
yeah.
I would have expected to hear about the sort of touches, minimum, maximum touches, and
number of passes before shooting. Mm-hmm. Michael score bonus for number of passes and then a shot.
Brilliant. I like that. That's really nice, because that will link into some of the other stuff. Because we always see a lot of coaches going, you can't score until you've made X amount of passes. Whereas actually, if you've got someone in front of goal who's got an open goal, but you've made 2 passes less than you're supposed to, what's how is that realistic? Yeah. So I like that. Bonus point for making the passes. But actually, if you score, you score. But actually, if you score after you've made 10 passes, it's worth 5. So then we're starting to reward for that focus.
Yeah. When you receive, can you finish quickly?
Okay. So
cheat codes.
Cheat codes.
Cheat codes.
Oh, brilliant! So now we're talking. So now there'll be some of that stuff that we're going to be bringing out of sort of the next part, which is really nice. I'm just going to tick it on. If you want to keep popping those things in there, then you're more than welcome. So I've sort of gambled a little bit and gone for maybe 3 that I would potentially have seen and delivered myself, but seen new coaches maybe put these into little conditioned games. So we've got 3 touch, we've got every player must touch the ball before scoring, and we've got left-footed goals only. So we need to think about what tactical outcomes we're going to get from that and what technical outcomes, but actually, is that all we're going to get from it? So I mentioned earlier about the every player must touch the ball before scoring. That's one that comes up a lot. But again, if you've got someone in front of goal that's gone round the goalkeeper and you suddenly go, no, Kirsty hasn't had the ball yet. Are they going to turn round and play the ball back to Kirsty rather than pop the ball in? So actually, we are going to get a technical outcome, is that we're looking at maybe good possession. We're keeping possession. We're making sure everybody in the game is involved from an inclusive point of view. Brilliant. but when it comes to that realism to the game, is it going to fit? Is that what's going to happen if we play at the weekend? Three touch again is a great one. It's one that's used a lot. Tactically, you're going to get your players to think where they're receiving it from, where their second touch is going to go, and if they can play in less than three, even better. So you're going to get players that are good at moving the ball on quickly. But actually, you might have players in your session that need more than 3 touches. So if the whole group of your players is only allowed 3 touches, you're going to have players that maybe could do it in 1 or do it in 2, but you're going to have players that need more than that. So what can we do to ensure they're as part of the practice as others? And I just threw left-footed goals in only, or your second favourite foot, as I like to call it. If you do score with your second favourite foot, actually, is it worth double? Is it worth more? So you still, if you've got an opportunity to score with your favourite foot, it still counts, but second favourite foot goals are worth 3, 4, 5. So you encourage that decision making as to, actually, if I just shift it here and strike it with my foot, I'm going to get bigger rewards. I don't know if anything's coming through in the chat in those sort of bits there. If not, no problem.
Yeah, yes, and there's a couple of additional ones came in. Darren mentioned extra points if you include the goalkeeper in the build-up player.
Yeah.
Extra points for the area of the pitch that the ball is won back in, i.e. Win the ball back in the final third, 5 points, middle third, 2 points, and so on. Yeah, working on pressing. Really good one there from Michael. Can score from anywhere, but bonus points for every short pass from Dave as well.
Oh, who decides whether it's a short pass or not? That's players going, it's a short pass. You're going, no, it was over an X amount of distance. I like it though, controversial. So yeah, lots of technical bits. So we're looking at the that real red corner of the 4-corner model. But actually, are there any other things, and can we make it as realistic to the game as possible? So realistic to those opportunities to have success. So I always look at this extras. So yes, if we get the tech-tac stuff, brilliant. But actually, if we get the other things as well, we know those other the 3 of the other corners, we could be winning. Like I said, there might not be all of your players are going to be able to do some of those classic rules that we'll go to. So how can we incorporate that into our sessions? What social aspects could we start to include and how? So we're going to think about what we can do to encourage our players to have conversations, and that's not necessarily conversations that are non-football related, but it might lead to that. So actually, what are we doing to encourage those conversations around tactics, decision making, formations, all those sorts of things that are going to have a bigger impact outside of the game potentially, because we're encouraging those conversations and that thought process as a group, sometimes as individuals, but also can we get them working as groups to come up with different solutions to problems. Obviously then we've got to think about how we can gain a psychological understanding of our players. What challenges can we put into our games that are going to get something from our players psychologically? Are there players that are going to struggle when they have less players than the other team? What does that tell you about that player? Is there someone who is going to struggle if the other team are awarded 3 points for scoring a goal and their team are only worth 1? Or have you got players that mentally can deal with having less players in their team? What are they going to do, and what impact can they have on the other players? And what conditions might affect them in the physical corner? So what conditions can we maybe hit in where they're maybe just going to have to work a little bit harder in certain areas? Not for the full game, but there might be sessions where they're going to have to work a little bit harder in certain activities for bigger rewards. Obviously, that's going to be linked into making sure it's specific for their age group and it's realistic to them, rather than pushing them beyond boundaries. I don't want them doing bleep test if they're under 7s, which I have heard of before. So yeah, if we can avoid that, great. But what can we do within a game to give our players an opportunity to push themselves physically? There's something called gamification that I've come along, and I'm still very, very new in terms of the amount of insight and input I've had that I've sort of looked at within gamification. But it's something that I'm really interested in, and It's about how we can link in what our players potentially are interested in away from the game, but if we bring it into a football context, what payoffs are we going to have? So gamification is the application of typical elements of gameplay, so point scoring, competition with others, changing rules of play, to other areas of activity. So what can we do from those games, and it could be board games, computer games, whatever it is, if we bring those into a football context, what does that mean? What are we going to get from our players? And just interestingly, I saw this come up the other day, and it was a little tweet from Cody Royal. So Cody Royal is he's an elite coach developer, and he works with head coaches. And he was working in the AFL in Australia. He's Australian originally, but now he's in the States, and he's worked with coaches on a variety of different sports, but actually works with them to try and get as much as they potentially can from their players. And he said the wrong question: how do I get my players to stop playing video games? Actually, we don't want them to stop playing video games. There might be times where they play too much, but we don't want to say don't do it. The real question is, what is it within that gameplay, in that computer game format, that makes it so compelling and makes players want to return to it? And then what can we do to make our interactions with players very similar? And that might go across other areas, put in their meetings and things. But I just thought that was quite a timely tweet because it came out last week. Quite interesting. I don't know if anybody's got any thoughts on that, or if they've tried to do something like that. I don't know if people want to share anything in the chat, or if anything else has come through.
Adam, just going back to the previous slide, when we're coming up with challenges and conditions within the games that we're planning for and we're setting up, there's got to be some thought around the different ability levels of the players, so that we're dealing with differentiation within your group.
Yeah, and it might be that we start to look at individual challenge rather than we're all doing the same thing.
Yeah.
It all goes back to, and all of this stuff will eventually go back to your player-centered approach, so that the person at the centre of any decision that you make is that player. What do I need to do to A, make sure that player is comfortable, they understand what's going on, B, how can I challenge them, or on the flip side, how can I give them an opportunity to gain success, and it's appropriate for their learning and development. So again, I go back to that 3-touch. If you've got a player who needs to have 3, 4, 5 touches to feel confident on the ball, then don't put a condition on saying they can only have 3 touches. Maybe say to them, if you can play it in 3 touches, brilliant. If you need to have more, feel you need to do so, but give them a chance so they know there's an opportunity for them. If it does come and they have more than 3, they're not going to give away a free kick, or they're not going to put their team under pressure. You're just allowing them to have that opportunity to think, actually, if I do have a touch and have a second touch and then pass it, it might be beneficial for me and my team. But there are players that need that challenge, and you can say to them, do you know what, if you can get that pass away with 1 touch, brilliant. If you can't, don't worry, but I want to see you playing first time into the final third. So you've got to think about those individual challenges, maybe more beneficial to your players, rather than that full-on, we're all doing 2-touch or we're all doing 3-touch.
Yeah, there's a couple of things come in, Adam. I started playing Fortnite, so I was able to talk about it with the kids rather than dismissing it. And Michael again tried to do a Fortnite, called it Fortnite game, 8 players, 6 with football, 5 areas starting largest. Object was to keep possession of the ball, shield, etc. After 60 seconds, the area reduced, and anyone outside that area had to do X number of keepy-ups to get back alive. Ended with the last player on the ball in the final smaller segment. That was from Michael. Very good.
Brilliant. Yeah, bring that gameplay in. I've got no idea what Fortnite is, apart from the floss. And I can floss, but I did it in front of a group of 16, 17-year-old once, and I would never do it again because I got annihilated, to put it nicely. So yeah, I would never do it again. So I've no idea how it works. So that, I've still got to go back, and I've only got a younger son, so my son's only 4, so we're not into that. But if I had, older children, the older he gets, then I'm sure there'll be things that I will pick up a lot more. Yeah, if we can put those bits of gameplay into our sessions, then brilliant. So I'm just going to go through some sessions that I've seen, I've delivered, and there'll be maybe a couple of these games that people have gone, yeah, seen that one, done that one, which is great. But then if you have done them, I want you to think about where could it go next, and share your experiences in the chat box so others can see it as well. So where else can we take these games and these practices? So this is no going back. So this is one that I saw Pete Sturgis deliver. I've gone, thank you, Pete. I love that. And somebody, which most people do, anything that Pete Sturgis puts on, people are like, yeah, that's gold, we'll have it. And quite rightly so. And people were putting that in the condition bit earlier on in the presentation. So it's just a game-related practice, but actually in that central zone, the pass can only be played forward. So outside of that green central zone, the ball can go backwards, sideways, whichever you like. Actually, in that middle section of the pitch, that larger third, it can only be a forward pass. Free kick awarded if it doesn't go forward. I'm just going to put the question out there. What would your session outcome be if you were going to play that game-related practice? What might be the focus of your session? So is it going to be dribbling? Is it going to be passing? Is it going to be shooting? It might be another one. There might be others that come up.
Positioning's come through from Edward. Third man runs or passing. Intensity. Passing and possession.
Okay. For me, I deliver this session when I want to work on dribbling and players keeping on the ball, because if they can't pass the ball forward, if there isn't that opportunity, then what are they going to do? And the next best thing, can we keep the ball? And to keep the ball, are they going to look after it? Can they protect it? Can they have lots of touches to make sure they're keeping it close? There's still lots of pressure on young players to pass the ball. Lots of things from the sideline saying to players, pass it, pass it, pass it. Actually, we want players to feel comfortable on the ball. And if they can't play a pass, we don't want to feel rushed that it just goes bang. I'm just going to have to just get rid of it. No, what can we do to keep it? How can you position your body? How many touches can you have to protect your ball? Can you get your body in between the ball and your position? Or actually, can we take players on? So I delivered this. So I coach a women's team in the National League Southwest, and I delivered this session. And there was one player who played at the back and would normally get it and give it every single time. But they received the ball in that middle area, and they took two players on, beat them, and got into that final area and delivered a pass across the box. And I was like, if that condition hadn't been there, they would have got the ball and passed it within 2 touches. Maybe if they can get rid of it in the first touch, they would have done. So it was just encouraging players who might not necessarily want to keep the ball or do something with it. You're encouraging them to be creative. And if they don't beat a player, then, hey, don't worry about it, because that's not actually the focus of the game. You'll want them to try things. So for me, I've always used it as a dribbling session, but it could be used as any of those other ones, because it might be you're looking at shooting as the final product after that forward pass. But that's quite a nice one, and fairly simple in terms of setup. There's your pitch. And so then after that game, if you play that in the middle of your session and you've got 15 minutes left and your players come up to you, they say, can we have a game? You can go, excuse me, we've just played a game. So again, it alleviates that. It takes away that pressure. This might be done at the beginning. We've just done an I2CF on Friday, the second week, and there were some people that said, do you know what? Because in the first week we mentioned doing whole part whole, so actually having a game to start with. And they were like, wow, we did a game to start with. Our players loved it. They loved the fact they could have a game at the beginning, they turn up, go straight into a match, because that's what they come for. And there was a great quote that another Coach Developer shared with me the other day, from Jose Mourinho, I think, saying, a pianist doesn't warm up to play the piano by running around it 20 times. They actually play the piano. So let's give our players as much game time as possible, because ultimately that's what they're going to do at the weekend. So it's just a nice way of incorporating into your practices, so your players are getting out of it what they want. Another one that this sort of came from the gamification. It's my attempts at trying to make something work, and this was all about finding out what players worked. And I delivered this to a group of university students, and we played hockey. And I called it the Bank of Adam. Obviously, you can call it whatever you want to call it. And I just said the first team to score 3 goals unlocks the bank. So as soon as 3 goals are scored, whichever team that is, that team comes to me and goes, right, we're going to try and cash in some of our goals. And I wanted them to think about what their decision-making process and what their tactics were going to be in the first instance. So were either team going to go gung-ho and go, we've got to get 3 goals first because we want those conditions, or were they going to go, we've got to be a little bit conscious here because I think they're going to come at us, so we've got to be prepared that we're going to try and win the ball, maybe sit back a little bit. Fortunately, in that situation, both teams went for it. Really open game. One team scored 3 goals. So now they come to me and go, right, what are the options? So they can give me a goal. So they're now they've got 2 goals now, but they can take a player from the other team. So now they've got an overload. And they may choose what they perceive as the best player. Okay, so again, you're looking at their thought process. They could come to me and go, do you know what, Adam, you can have 2 of our goals. So we've only got 1 goal now, but the other team's restricted to 2 touch. So that's the reward we've got for being, for attacking and going out and scoring those 3 goals. We're going to put that condition on the opposition. Or they can go, do you know what, we're so confident we can go and score more. Here's all 3 of our goals. So we're now down to 0, but every time we score from now on, we're going to get 2 points. And then I put just a little caveat at the bottom. If they decided that they didn't want to choose any of those, then I would offer it to the other team for free. So that makes them go, no, they're not having any of those conditions, they're ours. We are the ones that are going to control them. So when we go back to those extras from that game there, we're getting the social corner. We're having conversations about tactics. We're having conversations about opportunities to beat the other team, decision making, all those sorts of things within a group. And you might get some players who, when they play the game, you wouldn't see their understanding show up very much. But in this aspect, you might see players that suddenly come up with a solution or have an input in some of these outcomes to go, they get it. I now know that your thought process and your thinking level is up here, whereas before I wasn't sure because I didn't see it in the game. Actually, mentally, they have a really good understanding.
So Adam, from your point of view within that game, did you learn a lot from the players yourself there then?
Yeah, massively.
Yeah.
And I've delivered it in different, so in football context, I've delivered it in a handball context as well. And it's just, and as I say, I delivered it, it was a hockey game to a group of university students. And each one has been different. But it was understanding what the players sort of were going to take from the game. I've had it where nobody scored 3 goals because it's been really close. So I've then had to go, right, how am I going to tweak and adapt it? So I had to go, right, first goal comes to me, and you can choose any one of those conditions. So it's all about making sure you're making the practice and fit it and adapt it to the needs and wants of your players. So that's why I put the question there, how can we include additional player ownership into this practice? For me, I wouldn't put the conditions down. I'd let my players choose the conditions. So actually, we've got 1 goal, 2 goals, 3 goals. What do you want to have in return for giving me one of your goals? So what are they going to come up with? What conditions are they going to almost rank first, second, and third? What's going to be the ultimate condition that they want to aim for? Or what would be a couple of little bonuses?
I suppose that could be linked to performances, recent games that they've been playing at the weekend, couldn't it? Which are then getting your players to think about themselves without you actually coming up with where your focus is is theirs different to where yours is? Or is it the same as what yours is?
Yeah.
As the coach, yeah.
So actually, if they gave me two of their 3 goals, so I've got 2 goals, I've only got 1 now. That might be they decided that they maybe didn't win the ball enough in the final third, or when they lost the ball. So actually, you could give them now three additional points every time they win it in their attacking third, as well as going on to score other goals. So it could be linked to your previous match days, it could be linked to previous training, or it could just be linked to what they perceive as being successful or would help. But yeah, just giving a little bit of additional ownership to your players if you let them choose the outcome.
Yeah.
Football bingo, this might be one that coaches have done. It's game related practice, so again, it's similar to the setup, just a pitch, 2 goals. And let your players choose some methods. I've done it before. If I've delivered a coach ed course, I've put maybe 3 of the 6 conditions in there, but actually I've let them choose the rest to find out what their understanding is. I've had some hilarious ones in there, like has to go one, and it might be in one of the next games I'm going to show as well. They wanted to tick it off if it hit both posts and crossbar and went in, and it was like, okay, we have only got 20 minutes that we're delivering this for, but if that's the challenge they wanted to set themselves, you would then have the conversation to say, right, is that realistic? No, why not? Okay, what might be a better one to try and finish? Well, if we get it in the bottom corners and things like that. So you can then start to have the conversations and gain an understanding of where your players are in terms of what challenge or what they see as a challenge, but how you can then coach them to have a better understanding of what would be more realistic. So yeah, just a nice little football game of bingo. But one of the biggest things in here is to create overloads, because every time somebody scores, they have to go and chalk it off on the board. So they have to go and scrub it out. At the same time, whilst the other opposition goalkeeper gets the ball out and they play. So for that short period of time, you're then looking at what decisions are going to be made by the team who have just conceded. What are they going to do to make the most? And you could put the bingo boards anywhere. So we talked about that physical corner. Actually, if you put the bingo cards not right next to the pitch, if you put them in different areas or different corners of the 3G pitch or wherever you're going to go, that player's got to make that run, chalk it off before coming back into the game. For that small part of time, what are the opposition going to do? You then might see players who don't want to do it particularly quickly. What impact is that having on their team? So you potentially get lots of different payoffs from this one, as well as overloads, creativity, different ways of scoring. Within that little, just a game. So again, 2 goals, 2 teams. It's a game, but with those conditions, far more different payoffs than you would say if you just went, yeah, here's a game, here's a ball, let's play for 15 minutes. Give them another bit of a challenge.
Age groups, Adam?
Any age group.
Age groups, yeah.
Any age group you like.
Right.
Which is one of the things I knew would come up. People saying, could you play this with adult players? Yes. No matter what the level, players always want to come up and be challenged, but also enjoy themselves. Just because you get to maybe under 15, 16, 17s and obviously into the senior game, doesn't mean players don't want to have a laugh and enjoy themselves and have a bit of a challenge. It will just look and feel different to what it would do if it was under 7s, under 8s. I will keep referring back to Twitter, and my phone's going mad because there's lots of people following me, which I appreciate, everybody. But there was another video on there, and it was just highlighting no matter who you are or what level you're playing at, you still want to enjoy it. And there was an elite basketball team, and they were playing American football, small American football, and they were trying to score touchdowns in a sports hall. The coach went, right, same game, except now you've all got to dribble. So you've all got to dribble your basketball at the same time as playing American football end zones with this ball. So they have to dribble, catch it, and throw it whilst dribbling their basketball. And they were absolutely loving it. They were doing bits where they had to join up and link arms and go as pairs, and it had only little bits of basketball in it because they were dribbling the basketball. The rest of it was just a little bit of chaos, but it was creating this amazing environment for these players, and I think they were aged between sort of 18 and 21. So we've got to make sure that no matter how old our players are, we can provide them with those challenges. I play these games with my women's team, and they love it. They get the tech-tac stuff from the other coach. When I turn up, they're like, yes, it's an anti-session. It's going to be random. It's going to be weird, but it's going to be different to what we get sort of the other 70, 80% of the time. So it was a long-winded answer to your question there, wasn't it?
And ultimately, it's creating that environment which is enjoyable for the players to want to come back every week, isn't it, Adam?
And that's the biggest thing, and that's something that I would say I'm not the greatest coach in the world by far, but what I found was that I actually could create an environment, and I like creating environments. And when I'm given that challenge to go and create an environment that's right for the group I'm working with, because it's not every environment's going to be the same. And when people say, it's got to be fun. Okay, yes, it has to be fun, but you need to know what fun means to each and every player in your group. I think we had this conversation on the podcast, Gary, that your idea of fun is different to my idea of fun, which is different to Lynn's fun and Helen's fun. So what if we're all in the same group, how does our coach ensure that we are all getting something out of that to make us go, I enjoyed that tonight, that was great. And something that I love the challenge of. This is just another session, and this I stole this from somebody who was doing a handball session. So they were delivering their final assessment for their level 2 handball in a sports hall. They had 3 goals, but the goals were benches in a triangle, and the team had to try and score, but they could score in either of the other 2 teams' goal. They could throw the ball and hit the bench of either of the other teams. So I was like, I'm taking that to come into a football context. And then very similar to the bingo one, actually, if you score a goal, either yourself or one of your teammates has to go and take a cone from your goal and go and put it in the scoring zone. So again, you're creating overload, and because it's only small-sided, they're only in little teams, and there's 3 teams in this, which makes it even more chaotic, which is great. You're going to get a chance for overload, chance for underloads. What can we do because actually we've just conceded, we're potentially now more vulnerable because there's 2 teams coming at us and we're a player down. I've done it before where I've got different sized goals. So yes, my goals in the picture are different sizes, and I've done that for a reason. But I don't tell. I've done it before on a coach ed course. I just get them into 3 teams, and then suddenly go, oh, they've got one less than us. That's not fair. I go to pick a goal, off they go to a goal, and then they're all in a goal, and suddenly go, hey, our goal's bigger than theirs. And again, we're looking at that psychological stuff. You will get some players who will moan, but will you get players that will go, it doesn't matter, we'll deal with it. So it's just creating an opportunity for them to have that decision making. So it's first to 3. First team to put 3 cones in the scoring zone wins the game. Or you play for 5 minutes. So that's one thing I've sort of learned over the years, is if you create a game and a practice, put a limit on it, put a time limit or a scoring limit on it, so your players know what they're working towards. If you're just putting on a practice and players are just playing and playing and playing, what's the target? What are they aiming towards? The majority of times, if there's no target or nothing to work towards, the intensity levels aren't the same. Whereas if you say this is 3 minutes or first to 3, whichever happens first, go. The challenge is there. Actually, we better score these goals quick. We've only got 3 minutes. So it just adds to the sort of psychological part of it. A tweak then I put on it, I said, right, you've got 6 cones now. But if you score in your chosen way, so as one team would have chosen, hit both posts and crossbar and it goes in, then you can put 3 cones in the scoring zone. So effectively, if you score 2 goals in your chosen way, you're the winners. So then you go to each team and they have those conversations. So you'll have one team who might go, well, if we score first touch, brilliant, there's your way. Another team might say, if we score with a header, okay, fantastic. How many headers have we scored in the last game? None. All right, all the best. And one team might just say, we've all got to touch the ball before we score. So they're bringing in those other little conditions, but they've all got their own one depending on what they think is successful. Some will have this ridiculous challenge. Some will have it really simple because they've gone, well, if we've just got to do it this way, then brilliant. There's a chance for us to win. And that's probably one of the best games that I like delivering when I deliver Coach Ed, because it's quick, it's fun, it's enjoyable, but it can go in lots of different ways. Yeah, just a bit of a random one, but it's nice because there's 3 goals. That's the only thing I will say is that might be quite difficult, because I imagine if you have got a team, you've only got a third of the pitch, you might even have a sixth, you might have had half of a third. So actually your scoring areas might be different. It doesn't have to be goals. Could it be end zones? Could it be little pop-up goals? Could it be a target player? So just think creatively about how you might use those targets rather than goals, because I appreciate that's always going to be a challenge.
Adam, I think going back to probably where you started from tonight, the importance around your practice design is so important within this. Ultimately, the games that you're going to play and set up for your session need to be planned around what outcomes you want to have coming out in your session.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, what your outcomes could be tech-tac, but you might want to get a psychological aspect to you want to push your players to find out what happens when they're losing. What do your players do when they're losing? Because that might be something that they're not used to in a game. So if you have a team that maybe wins a lot of games, all of a sudden they lose, what impact has that had on them? So if you can recreate those experiences in training, they're going to be more used to those, what to do, how do we react if we're 2-0 down, 3-0 down, 4-0 down, because you're going to see what happens to your players, and if they've had those experiences within the training, there's going to be more of an opportunity for them to understand that it's going to happen again at the weekend. So your focus doesn't always have to be tech-tac. You're going to get outcomes from it, yes, but there might be a week where you go, this week we are working on a social aspect where I want all my players to have conversations with at least 5 others. How can I do that within a football context rather than forcing them to have a competition or a conversation about what they did at school? That might be come as an outcome and result of it, but ultimately what can we do to create conversation within a football environment first that will have bigger payoffs?
Yeah.
Because that question comes up to me a lot. I've got a really quiet team, they don't talk to each other on the pitch, how can I get them to talk more? Have opportunities where they have to discuss and come up with solutions, because they're then going to be far more comfortable in one another's company. So there was just 4 little games here that some of my favourites. Tried lots of others along the way, but there's some of my favourites. There might be some people on here that are really really knowledgeable on match play cards. So these are the ones that I tend to use. There's lots of different resources out there, but I use an organisation called the Coaching Lab, and it's a guy that lives locally to me, and we sort of moved in the same circles but didn't realise it until we sort of got a bit closer to working to each other professionally. A guy called Jack Rolfe. He's a hockey coach. Part of his university dissertation was to come up with how he could create conditions and make game-based practice common within hockey to begin with, but wanted to extend it to multi-sports. So came up with match play cards and has been going great guns. He's over in Australia now, coaching hockey. But these cards have just been brilliant. I first came into contact with these about 3.5 years ago, and since then they've just gone great guns. So they've got match play cards. They've actually got reflection things as well, so you can have reflection conversations with your players. Really nice. They come in like a little bag. They're quite good. But just these little cards you can give to players, and they're plastic. So if they get wet, dirty, you just wipe them clean. And they've also brought out some animals ones as well for the sort of younger age groups. So if you do work with those sort of 4s, 5s, and 6s, there's ones that are animal match play cards. try and get one that's got an arrow on it now. They've just got the ones that have got writing. There's like jellyfish, and what else we've got? When you're on safari, what do you notice? Starfish, loads of different ones. So if you do need some conditions, there's ones in there, and they're really good and really helpful. And there's loads of stuff on their website as well. There's other ones out there. People may be familiar with the Magic Academy, so the stuff that Rusty and Fletch have done, again from a rugby background predominantly. Actually, they've come up with some really nice ways of how they can get engagement from players across a variety of different sports. That isn't just technical and tactical; it's the other side of things. You'll get tech-tac payoffs, yes, but actually it focuses on some of the other areas of the sports. So there's some other really nice resources out there that people might find helpful, or just come up with your own, which is almost what I would encourage people to do. Yes, have a little bit of help from those sort of cards, but come up with your own creative games. As a sort of summary in all of that, there's just a couple of things that I would always say to people. Be creative. So try and challenge yourself to come up with sessions that are going to get additional payoffs from your players. And be creative. Link it into what they know. Link it to what they understand. And get to know them. There's one coach I knew on a level 1 who spent 45 minutes of his session with his players talking about WWE wrestling, because they, after conversations, suddenly realised that the majority of the group, as well as him and his 2 sons, they all love WWE. So they would spend 45 minutes talking about it and then go, "Whoa, we've only got 15 minutes, we better have a game." But he could then knew if he linked things in towards sort of wrestling and characters and things like that, he would get a real payoff and a real buy-in from his players. Allow players to be creative too. So we talked about that player ownership. It's massive. You're going to find out so much more from your players. Again, those quiet ones in the game who might not say anything, when it comes to being creative and coming up with new ideas, they may be the ones that make you go, "Wow, now I can see what makes them tick and how they can come out of themselves." Give players a choice. So rather than saying, "Right, this is what we're doing," no, we're not. No, we can't have 5 touches, it's 3 touches. Actually, give them a choice. And a couple of those games I've mentioned there was opportunities for players to choose what outcomes they wanted. Again, going back to gamification, you can put a pause in there. So if you've got 1 pause in the game, at any point you can pause the game and move players around and change things up. And then when you press play, what's the different outcomes of potentially what it was previously? But allow players to choose those opportunities. Allow them to problem solve. Again, you're going to get those conversations where there may be a bit of a clash in what players think is the right solution to certain situations, but you want to see them having those chats. So allow them to problem solve, especially if, like say, if you are challenging them to be 2-0 down, 3-0 down with 5 minutes to go, what are they going to do? Are they going to sulk, or are they going to go, "Right, let's do this. We don't want to concede any more, and we're going to go and score at least 2. Let's see what happens." And like I say, provide them with challenges that aren't just technical. Create competition. We want that competitiveness. Lots of people have always said to me when there shouldn't be, where they're told that it shouldn't be competitive when playing football. Kids aren't stupid. Kids do understand that they need to go and win. We just have to make it appropriate for them to understand actually, if they don't win, it's not massive, but it's going to happen. There are going to be times where there's going to be other teams and other players who are going to be the winners and you necessarily aren't. It's not going to happen all the time. How do you deal with that? So it's really important that we create that competition and replicate it within our training so that it doesn't come as a shock on a Saturday where they suddenly go, "What? We don't lose. Why have we lost?" Replicate it in your session. So create that competitive element to it. And lastly, enjoy it. Enjoy going through a process of coming up with fun little games. And if your kids are playing a game and you think, "You know what, I want to go and play that," don't go and join in, obviously. But that means that there's something's working. If you're looking at your session and going, "Oh God, I wouldn't want to play that," don't do it. So enjoy the process yourself and come up with games that you know you're going to enjoy delivering, because we coach because we enjoy coaching. Ultimately, yes, it's for the players, but we need to be able to enjoy it at the same time. And if we can do it where our players are having a great time and we're having a great time delivering it, then win-win, even better. So there you go.
Adam, just going back to something that you mentioned earlier in the presentation, and it was on the old youth modules that we did a few years ago with the FA and the whole part whole. There is nothing wrong with starting with that game to get the players engaged, and continuing with games throughout your hours coaching that you've got the players with you on a weekly basis at whatever age group, because surely that's the game that they play on a weekend and they want to learn within that realism, that realistic situation of what they play, what they come up against on a weekend.
Yeah, and if we can create that within an environment, then fantastic. Now, I saw a level 2 coach a couple of years ago, and he had a group of senior players, so they're playing semi-pro, turning up, and he had a little arrival activity where more players joined in. They would join another team, so the teams would build up. They were playing football. They were playing with a tennis ball, just a game with a tennis ball. But they could have played this session for the full hour and a half they had, if they wanted to, and if you'd have let them, they could have played it. Like I say, they're senior players, but actually they're only playing with a tennis ball. But it took them back to when they were kids. And I was a kid, we would pay 20 aside on the playground with a tennis ball. Obviously, you don't want to pay 20 aside with your kids. But just the element that playing with a tennis ball gives you is just something that's a little bit different. Play a game with a rugby ball, see what happens. That might be a leveler. So you might have players who with the football are up here and others that maybe need that little bit of a boost. Actually, if you stick a rugby ball in there, it's totally random. You can't say that there's one player who's going to be heads and shoulders above everybody else dribbling with a rugby ball, because it's going to go all over the shop. And again, it might just provide a little bit of a leveler for your players. So yeah, just think about how you can be creative with those games, and if you can put them at the beginning, even better.
Trade-off for you, Adam, between skills practices and games?
I think it just depends. I think sometimes you have to have skill-based practices. I'm very much a case of I don't like the word drill or drills. It makes me think militant, it makes me think repetition, it makes me think boring. However, there are, I don't want to say drill-based practice, there are skill-based practices that are necessary in terms of technical work, but we have to ensure that we're doing it so it's complementing what we're going to do in our gameplay. We shouldn't be doing it for the sake of like passing the ball over 5-10 yards for 20 minutes of a session. Is that going to get our players going away going, oh, I love that tonight? Or is it going to get them coming up to us going, can we have a game, Gary, please? Just want to play a game. We've just been passing the ball for too long.
Yeah.
So we've got to come up with, if we are going to do skills-based sessions, think about the time you're putting into it. If you can make it and have an enjoyable element to it, or a challenge within that skill-based practice, brilliant, or technical-based practice. But don't forget to think about actually what's going to be the biggest challenge for them when it comes to the weekend. It's going to be them playing the game. So the closer we can mirror that within our training sessions, and the better. Certainly for younger players, just get them playing little games, little 4v4s, little 3v3s, so they're constantly involved in a game. Had a coach talk to me today about a team he went to watch played 6v6, and the goalkeeper still kicked it long to a player who was the quickest and fastest, scored most of the goals, missed a few, but scored the goal. But that was the tactic, because that player was the best player, goalkeeper, long ball. But the manager was saying, oh, it's a 6v6, we're getting lots of game time. The players are getting game time, but they're not actually getting any time with the ball. So in training, can we do 3v3s, 4v4s, where there's going to be lots of contact and opportunities for actually being involved in the practice, and it will have a payoff. It's certainly my favourite style of coaching anyway. I like the game-based stuff.
Absolutely, I totally agree, Adam. Adam, I don't know whether you saw it. It was last week. It came out from the FA. There was some research done around 3v3, and the research was around a fenced area. So it was like a cage, and it was a 30 by 20 area that they played 3v3 in, and it was a 10-minute game. So ultimately, the ball was in play and the ball was rolling 100%. Yeah. But what was for me that came out, each outfield player within that 3v3 had 71 touches of the ball.
Around 70, wasn't it?
Yeah. In 10 minutes. So that's more touches, which you've just mentioned, more opportunities to score and finish, more opportunities to pass, and more challenges around, them 1v1 situations, 2v2. So I just thought that was really relevant to what we're talking about tonight, and what you've just mentioned.
Yeah, it reminds me of I get to show my age here, the Scorpion football. So for the 2002 World Cup, I actually did I worked for Nike, and we went round in the boroughs of London, setting up the cage, little square, and it was a 3v3 competition. First goal wins, and it was like proper knockout, and it was amazing. The amount of people that turned up to play this were it was fantastic, and it just takes me back to that little 3v3. First score wins. Eric Cantona was spot up. But yeah, if we can do that at training sessions, even if that's just our arrival activity, as soon as players turn up, get them into little teams, 2v2s, 3v3s, and just get them playing in those little games. They're going to have loads of touches on the ball, and feel like they're better prepared for when they go and play a game at the weekend.
And within them arrival activities, them games, your knowledge of the players and setting the teams up and who they're playing against is really important there. For to set the challenges for the players and the challenges around, ability levels.
Yeah, and there's no reason why you can't self-select your players and go, right, actually, you three are going to come over here. Actually, I want you to come over here, rather than going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Off you go. You 6 go down there. Actually, if you know your players well, put them up so the ones that need that a little bit of help and support are going to be in the right environment for them. But those that need a challenge are going to get that because they might be playing against players of a higher ability.
Yeah.
Or you're giving them different outcomes, different challenges to push them and stretch them a little bit.
Couple of questions come out, Adam. Any tips to keep engagement when your team is very divided in ability? From Lee.
Again, it goes back to that individual challenge, and think about actually what if you have got that split, then run a parallel session. So rather than putting them all in doing the same thing together, put them so you've got similar sort of ability players playing together. So they're doing the same game, but there may be a slightly different outcome onto one pitch than there is on another, but they're playing their similar abilities. So sometimes you don't always have to go, let's play a game 7v7, 8v8. Again, just go to that smaller format, so they're up against people of a similar ability. Individual challenge, individual opportunities to succeed is huge. But I don't know, it's always going to be a difficult one. It's one question that gets asked me a lot, and it got asked on the last course that I was delivering on Friday. How do we deal with those differences in abilities? Sometimes it is really, really difficult, but ultimately you want to make sure that everybody, like we were saying, comes away feeling like they've had some achievement and they've actually played and been part of a game. And it might be that you just ask the players. So we do. My day job is working with creating opportunities for coaches to be more inclusive and creating opportunities to work with disabled participants. One of the biggest things to find out what a disabled participant wants to do in a certain practice is to go and ask them, what do you think would work for you in this situation? How do you want to play it? What conditions do you want to have? Because they're the ones that are going to ultimately give you the best answer. So sometimes, rather than thinking we've got to come up with the answers ourselves, ask the players. Ask them what they think it needs to happen. And you may be surprised what answers you get. You might get some funny answers, but you might get some gold that you go, oh, thank you very much. You don't know until you ask.
Yeah, a bit of a personal one, Adam, from Darren. What is the condition? What is the condition apply to games that you hate the most?
The one where everybody has to touch the ball. Everybody has to touch the ball before scoring. When as soon as somebody puts that in there, I'm going, no. There was another one where when you win possession back, you can't score until the goalkeeper's touched it. I was like, okay, that means if you win the ball in your final third, and you've got a through ball. So it's just thinking, but from when the coach was delivering that, they were trying to tweak the practice. And there'll be loads of times when you tweak it, and I've certainly done it, where I've tweaked a game thinking, this is brilliant. And actually in practice, I look at it and go, yeah, this doesn't work. But then I go, I had a go. So there's always going to be a positive from it. I will never play that game again. Or I go, right, what went wrong? How can I tweak it? So again, it's that plan, do, review process. But in your own way, but it does that in their own way. But yeah, those probably are the two that, and 3 touch, always find that just a little bit, I don't know, just same old. Let's try and mix it up a little bit.
Yeah. Creative thinking, Adam. Creative thinking. As coaches, let's be creative with what we want to put out there and plan and deliver to our players.
Yeah. And if we're creative as coaches, hopefully it's going to run upon our players, and they're going to be creative players, which is ultimately what we want to try and produce. So
brilliant. Thanks very much, Alan. Just before we finish, couple of things from me. If anyone drop me an email with any thoughts on what you want to see as a webinar, face-to-face CPD events, because as a county FA, we're putting stuff on that you want to see. So please feedback to ourselves. Drop us an email on that. Our next Coach to Coach England Learning CPD event is on Wednesday, the 2nd of February, which is being delivered by Ryan Davies at the new Newcastle United Foundation building, Newcastle. So that is the Role of Others, 6:30 to 8:30. So please, it'll be great to see some of you along to that one. You'll get a great England Learning CPD event, but also get a look at the new foundation building. And last of all, if you've liked what you've heard from Adam tonight, we have got a podcast available on from the sidelines. So please have a look at that, have a listen to that, I should say. And finally, Adam, thanks very much for you sharing your time tonight and delivering Creative Games webinar.
Absolute pleasure. Like I said before, thank you very much for asking me. I really appreciate the offer to come on and give my point of view on coaching. Like I say, it's not the only way, but it's just the way that I quite like and want to take some stuff away from that. And great. So no, thank you very much for having me. And I hope you enjoyed it, everybody.
Thanks, Adam. We'll see everyone soon. Stay safe.
Cheers. Thanks very much. Bye now.